Namaskaram, Michael.
Namaskaram.
Thank you for all the work that you are doing, giving the explanations and deeper teachings of Bhagavans to all the devotees. I'm so blessed. I don't have any words to give. I always look at you as it's a point, some guide who can properly guide us through into Bhagavan's path.
It has nothing to do with me. It's all anything that is, if anything that I say has any clarity or is of any benefit whatsoever, that comes only from Bhagavan, because he is the source of all clarity. He is the source of all love. So whatever is given only by him. This little person, Michael, is completely incidental, unimportant. Bhagavan, in the form of Lord Rama, Bhagavan took a straw and used it as a Brahmastra, or a big blade of grass and used it as a Brahmastra.
Yes.
So the former president of the ashram, that is the present president's grandfather, he used to call me Vaikol. Vaikol means straw. So that's very apt.
Yes.
Bhagavan just uses some worthless piece of straw to do whatever he wants to do. So don't attach importance to the piece of straw. Attach importance to the one who is using this worthless thing for some good purpose.
Yeah. I still feels like something from some grace, somewhere it just pops up and just showed, oh, this is the way to go. This is just I've been searching it, but this is the way to go. And then the moment I got onto this one, it's like everything seems to be like so becoming clearer and clearer. It's like when you go deeper into the ocean, when you go deeper into the one of the things that you are searching for, then you see, oh, then all the things appears to be, it's almost like they other things which seems to be so real, it almost like they are just giving away and say, oh, okay, now you know, and I'll just walk out from your life, walk out from your path. It feels like that. I don't know whether it is just my mental feeling or it's something that Bhagavan is just showing me the path.
Yes.
One other thing that I would like to specifically talk about or request your guidance is the practice of self-enquiry. The teachings is giving a pointers. I can clearly understand intellectually. When I try to practice it, when I try to practice during the day, whenever Bhagavan reminds me or I get reminded by Bhagavan, sometimes I feel that it is kind of mental activity, mind activity, and so, oh, now I'm talking to Michael. Who is the one talking to Michael? It's me. It's just like me. Who am I? What is this me talking? It just goes to some extent, and it feels like I'm separating this body or senses or mind and going one level down, one level away from this one. I'm separating those one, I'm witnessing it. After that, it just becomes like a quiet feeling. It's like, okay, now I got to that kind of, I'm not attached, I'm not thinking about all this, talking to Michael or any activity that I'm doing it. I'm being like little bit quiet and kind of observing it, witnessing this. Okay, now I'm witnessing as if I'm not Srini. I'm just maybe I can call it as pure self or somebody other than the physical being. It feels like it's silent, being silent. I still don't know whether is it the way to begin the practice. I'm still thinking that I'm still getting hang of it, I would say, and trying to understand. But sometimes I feel that, oh, I'm still recognizing it. It may not be the right way. So if you can give more clarity. Yeah.
Firstly, before directly answering your question, I'll just say one thing about understanding. that is, Bhagavan's teachings are all pointers. So we need to understand what he is pointing at. His teachings, though he uses very simple words, and though actually his teachings are very simple, they are also very deep and very subtle. So we need to understand them clearly and correctly, because merely by understanding his teachings, we cannot know what we are. But without understanding, we won't know the way. But the understanding is necessary for us in order to see the way. Bhagavan is pointing at the way. If Bhagavan is pointing his finger at the moon, for example, if we don't understand what he's pointing at, we may think he's pointing at a coconut tree or something on the horizon. We need to understand what he's pointing at. So the understanding of Bhagavan's teaching, having a clear and deep and correct understanding of his teaching is important. But the understanding is a means, not the end. That is, we need to understand correctly in order to practice it correctly. If we haven't understood, we will be doing something else. So we shouldn't underrate the importance of understanding. Understanding is necessary, but it's insufficient. What is necessary and sufficient is attending to ourselves, being self-attentive, investigating ourselves. So I just say that as a preface to my answer. Then the actual answer to your question is, one of that is, in order to investigate ourselves, we need to distinguish ourselves from all other things. So, for example, in the old texts, there are so many different, what they call prakriyas. These prakriyas are all different ways of distinguishing ourselves from all other things. So, for example, one of the prakriyas is drisya viveka, distinguishing the seer from the seen. This is what you indirectly referred to when you said the witness. That is, we are not the witness in this context. That is, the term witness, we have to be careful with it because it's used in a different, there are two fundamentally different senses in which the term witness is used. Bhagavan said, when witness is referring to the one who is seeing, the knower, the perceiver, that is ego. So that's one sense in which the term witness is used. The term witness is also used often. Brahman, for example, is sometimes described as Sarva Sakshi, the witness of all. Bhagavan said, in that deeper sense, what is when it is said Brahman or Atma-swarupa is the Sakshi, it doesn't mean that Brahman is seeing all this. Bhagavan said, in that deeper sense, Sakshi means Sanidhi. It's in the mere presence of Brahman, but all this is seen. But who is the one who is seeing it? It is ego. So it's important to distinguish these two senses in which the term Sakshi is used. The reality that lies behind the ego is Brahman. So there's a close connection between these two senses, but Brahman is not what is seeing all this. It is ego that is seeing this. The light of awareness by which ego is seeing all this, that is Brahman. That is the pure awareness I am. So in Drisya Viveka, the witness means the one who is seeing all this, the one to whom all this appears. So whatever appears and disappears is something other than ourselves, because to whom does it appear? In whose view does it appear? In whose view does it disappear? In my view. So it is something different. I am something different, because we cannot be anything in the absence of which we exist and know ourselves. We exist and know ourselves. Now, for example, this gross body. Now we are aware of ourselves as this gross body. But when we're dreaming, we're not aware of this gross body. We're aware of what seems to be this gross body, but is actually another gross body. So it is not the same body. That is, if we are injured in dream, when we wake up, we don't find any injury. So it's a different body. So we can clearly distinguish ourselves from this physical body. But when Bhagavan talks about body, he's not just talking about the physical body. He's talking about all the 5 sheaths. As he says in verse 5 of Uludnaptu, Urul Panchakosa Uru. Because whenever we experience ourselves as I am this body, we don't experience only a gross body. That gross body is always a living body. It's never a dead body. Nobody has ever experienced themselves as a dead body. So it's a living body. That means not only the gross body is the physical body is the Annamaya kosha.
Correct.
The life that animates that is pranamaya kosha. So we never experience the Annamaya kosha without pranamaya kosha. Likewise, we never experience a sleeping body as I. It's always a body that seems to be awake. Even in dream, the body that we take as ourselves seems to be awake. So when we're awake, there's also mind, intellect, and will functioning within this body. So all these 5 together, these are the panchakosas, these make up the body. That is what Bhagavan says in verse 5 of Uludnaptu, Urul Panchakosa Uru. The body is a form of 5 sheaths. Therefore, all 5 are included in the term body. So we can begin by distinguishing ourselves from this Annamaya kosha. That's relatively easy because dream is a very good example. It's not the same physical body. But what about the subtler sheaths? The prana is a bit ambiguous. It's usually classified as part of the so-called subtle body. But actually, it's a physical thing. We can see the prana, we can see the breathing, the heartbeat, all the physiological functions. They are physical. So, in a sense, even the prana is relatively gross. But things like the mind, intellect, and will, these are all. It's the same mind, same intellect, and same will that are functioning in dream as in waking. So we could say, oh, maybe I may not be this gross body, this physical body, but at least I'm this mind, intellect, and will that I can say I am. No, it's not, because in sleep, we're aware of ourselves without being aware of any of these things. In the traditional text, it's often said actually, but what remains in sleep is the Anandamaya kosha. Anandamaya kosha means the chittam or will, all the vasanas. But Bhagavan goes a bit deeper. Bhagavan says, for whom are all the vasanas? They're only for ego. Yeah. In sleep, there is no ego. Therefore, none of the 5 bodies, none of the 5 sheaths exist in sleep. So in sleep, what we actually experience in sleep is only I am. We don't experience anything else. We are clearly aware I am, but we're not aware of anything else. So we cannot, since we exist as I am in sleep without being aware of anything other than ourselves, anything else, nothing other than I am can be what we actually are. So who am I? I am I, as Bhagavan often said. That is. So why this is necessary? We need this in order to clearly distinguish ourselves from everything else. Everything else is drisya. This body is drisya. The prana is drisya. The mind, all the mind in this context, mind means the grosser functions of the mind. Perceiving, remembering, thinking, feeling, emotions, all these things, the grosser functions of the mind, these are all perceived by us. Even the workings of the intellect, the judging, discriminating, reasoning, distinguishing one thing from another, these are all functions of the intellect. These are all things perceived by us. Even the will, the Anandamaya kosha, consists of what? It consists of vasanas. These vasanas are things, we are aware of them. We're aware of our inclinations. Oh, I like this, I don't like that. We're aware of all these things. So all the Panchakosa, they're all, as Bhagavan says in verse 22 of Upadeshundya, they're all jada and asat. They're jada. Why? Because they're objects perceived by us. They're not the subject. They're all drisya. Everything drisya is jada. Yeah. And it's also asat. It doesn't actually exist at all. It just seems to exist in the view of ego. So we need to distinguish ourselves from everything that is seen. This is necessary to understand. Once we've understood this, what we are to attend to is not any object. It's not any form. It is that to which all forms appear, that to which all phenomena appear. That's why Bhagavan, very important, that is, Bhagavan's teachings are extremely practical. And the philosophy taught by Bhagavan didn't teach any elaborate philosophy. He taught a very simple philosophy, very, very practical. So even the way Bhagavan expresses things has a deep significance. For example, he often says, whatever may appear, investigate to whom it appears. What does that mean? It's not, people misunderstand it and they take it, oh, Bhagavan says, if anything appears, you have to ask, to whom did this appear? No, he's not saying to ask to whom. He says investigate to whom. Investigating to whom anything appears means turning our attention away from what appears back towards ourselves, the one to whom it appears. In other words, turning our attention away from the drisya back towards the drik, away from the objects back towards the subject. So that's the beginning of investigation. Once we've turned our attention back towards ourselves, what do we have to do? We have to hold on to that self-attentiveness. So that's what people sometimes say. Bhagavan has given a two-step process. He says, first you have to ask, to whom are these thoughts? Then then the answer is to me. Then you have to turn your attention back to yourself. Some people even said 3 steps. First to whom, then to me, then who am I? That is not, it's a seamless process. That is what the Bhagavan didn't ask us to ask the question. He said investigate. So investigating to whom means turning our attention away from, that is, the natural flow of our attention is outwards, away from ourselves towards other things. Okay. So in order to change the outward going flow of the mind back into an inward going flow, we have to change its direction. So investigating to whom is changing the direction of the mind. Now we're going to, where are we going? We're going outwards. We have to change the direction back towards ourselves. That's why Bhagavan says, to whom does all this appear? That it appears to me. That's even the way he worded it is to help us it's a very subtle process, turning our attention away from everything that appears back towards ourselves. And once we've turned our attention back towards ourselves, we try to hold on to that self-attentiveness. We don't let go of it. That holding on to self-attentiveness is what he calls investigating who am I. So it's not definitely not 3 steps. It's not even 2 steps. It is a seamless process. That is, if you want to see the sun, for example, how do you see the sun? You have to turn and look at it. Yeah. Is your turning and you're looking at it, are they 2 different steps? First turn and then look? No.
It just happens.
It's a seamless process.
Yeah.
So Bhagavan, to make it very simple for us, he described it in this way. Whatever may appear, to whom does it appear? It appears to me. Who am I? So Bhagavan gave it, his description may seem to be a step-by-step description. Yes. But what he's describing is not steps. It is just a natural, seamless process of turning our attention. Our outward going attention has to be turned back to face ourselves alone.
So in the essence, it is to turn our attention to inwards. But the description,
that's all it is.
all
that's all it is. But we need to understand what we mean by inwards and outwards, because in the context of self-investigation, everything other than ourselves is outwards. So attending to your thoughts or your feelings, or meditating on chakras, or kundalini, or some flame that you conceive in the heart, or that's all bahyamukam.
Correct.
Antamukam or ahamukam means facing I alone. Bhagavan has made that very clear. So turning inwards means turning selfwards, turning back, facing to face ourselves alone.
So can we call it as self-attentiveness, like attending to the self, like inquiry?
Yes. It's not attending to the self, it's attending to ourself.
Pure self, self, or pure being. One question during the discussion, I got it. When we sleep, we experience as a pure self. We don't have this body, mind. We don't have any ego in the sleep state. What happens to this body, mind, all the Vishaya vasanas, or anything that was there in dream and waking state? Does it seems to be like a dormant and just being suppressed?
This is why in many texts they say everything remains. They say the Anandamaya kosha alone remains in sleep. The Anandamaya kosha means all the vasana, the seeds that sprout as all this. That is an explanation to satisfy our mind. Because if everything is non-existent in sleep, then how does it come back into existence? We want a satisfactory answer. So to satisfy those who want an answer, it is said, yes, in sleep, everything, the vasanas remain in seed form and they sprout again. And it even said the ego remains in seed form. For those who want an explanation, that's okay. But why do we need an explanation? If we think of it, how did ego come into existence in the first place? Is that a question that can ever be answered? It cannot. Why? Because as Bhagavan said, when people used to ask him, Bhagavan, why did this ego come into existence? Or how did ego come into existence? Bhagavan said, first investigate, first find that ego. If you can catch him, bring him here, and then we can find out how he came into existence. If you look, Tedinal otum pidicum, if you look for him, he'll take flight.
Escape,
because there's no such thing. Ego seems to exist only when we're looking outwards. When we look back to see, who am I? There's no such thing as ego to be seen. Because ego, as Bhagavan said, it's a formless phantom. Formless means it's got no form of its own. Phantom means it's got no substance of its own. It's got neither form nor substance. So it doesn't actually exist at all. It borrows its form from a body. It borrows its substance from Sat-Chit. The substance is I am.
Yeah.
The form is all the upadhis, this body. It is neither the pure I am, nor is it Sat-Chit. It is some spurious entity that rises in between, laying claim to both. Like Bhagavan used to tell the story of the bridegroom's friend, Maprayatoran. He didn't belong to either party, but both parties was thinking he belongs to the other party. And he was having a great time until after the marriage was over, when they started to make inquiries about who is that nice relative of yours. No, he's not a relative of ours. He's a relative of yours. Once the investigation began, he ran away.
So until that investigation starts, so we are just deluding into this Maya until that unexpected guest comes.
Exactly.
We are still in ego. We don't know that it is not real.
Yes.
Until we start investigating it.
Because we cannot say ego is unreal so long as we're looking outwards, because everything else we experience borrows its seeming reality from ego.
Correct.
From where does ego borrow its seeming reality? Only from ourselves. So what is actually real is only I am. But so long as we're looking outwards, we seem to be ego and everything else seems to be real.
When ego rises from in the beginning, like when we get up from the sleep and say, oh, I had a good sleep, does it mean that when it is starting, it just starts from the self and attached to this kind of, oh, I'm mind and body, everything, it just takes a form? It starts from I am the pure being, then it will forget itself and say, oh, now it is not pure, it is impure.
Because as Bhagavan says, urupatriyondam, grasping form, it comes into existence. So as soon as we rise as ego, there's no body there waiting to be grasped by us. That is, in dream, as soon as you start to dream, there's a body and world.
Yeah.
As if they were waiting for you. But of course, they weren't waiting for you. It's only when you start to dream that the body and world appear. Likewise, as soon as we rise as ego, we project and grasp a body as ourself.
Then we need to go backwards. we need to, as ego came into existence from the pure self, and we need to turn back and say, from ego.
And that's why Bhagavan often said, go back the way you came. We came rising, that the ego is the doorway through which we came out. Ego is the doorway through which we have to go back. So coming back to what we were talking about earlier, so we first need to distinguish ourselves from everything else. Distinguishing ourselves from everything else is not self-investigation. That is just the preliminary.
Yeah.
So all these prakriyas are not Atma-vichara. The prakriyas are laying the groundwork. That is, first we have to have that understanding. We have to clearly distinguish the seer from the seen. Then, instead of looking at what is seen, instead of looking at the drishya, we have to look at the drik. We have to look at ourselves. But what we actually are is not the drik, because the seer is ego. So when ego, as Bhagavan has explained, ego is chit jada granti. It is the knot formed by the entanglement of chit and jada. Of course, chit is never entangled with anything, but from a perspective of ego, chit seems to be fully entangled with this body. So it is chit jada granti, otherwise called I am this body. It is not the pure I am, and it's not the body. It is a spurious entity that comes into existence when the two are mixed. So it is the granti, it is the not. So when we investigate ourselves, what is it we are investigating? We are not investigating the upadis, the body. We're only investigating the chit element of the chit jada granti. That is the doorway through which we go back to the pure chit that we actually are. So we have to, when we investigate ourselves, we're investigating ego, the false awareness, I am this body. But we're not investigating the body, we're investigating the heart of ego. What is the heart of ego? It is only I am.
Yes.
So
that's where it started from.
We have to go deep into the heart, and then we find the heart alone remains, the heart alone exists. Nothing. The heart means our own real nature, the pure awareness I am. That is the heart.
It is like when we have the chit jada granthi, we are just untying it. The tie, we're just tying the knot, untying the knot, and say, then what remains is I am.
But how do we untie it?
Through the process of self-inquiry.
By holding on to the chit element, that is, these upadis are not holding on to us. We often complain that we're in bondage. We're not able to escape bondage. The world is not holding on to us. The body is not holding on to us. The 5 sheaths are not holding on to us. We are holding on to them. And then we complain that we're in bondage. Bhagavan used to compare it to a man standing under a tree, holding a branch, saying, I'm in bondage, I can't let go. And passers-by say, why? The tree isn't holding you, you're holding the tree. No, but I have to hold the tree, because if I let go of the tree, I'll fall down. They say, you're standing on solid ground. Bhagavan said, likewise, all we need to do is to let go of the non-self, and what we actually are alone will remain. So it's we who are holding on to these things. So that's why what Bhagavan says in verse 25 of Uludunapadu, it is so significant. Urupatriyondam, grasping form, it comes into existence. Urupatri nikkam, grasping form, it stands. Urupatri undu mika ongam, grasping and feeding on form, it flourishes abundantly. Uruvittu urupatram, leaving form, it grasps form. So the very nature of ego is grasping. The normal nature of ego is to grasp form. But if instead of trying to grasp any form, if it tries to grasp itself, what happens? Tedinal otum pitikam. If sought, it takes flight. That instead of trying to, we're always grasping things other than ourselves. If we try to grasp ourselves, this ego will take flight. It will subside and disappear. Why? Uruvatra peyahande. It's a formless phantom ego. Because it's formless, it cannot rise and stand and flourish without grasping form. If it tries to grasp itself, since it is not a form,
there's no form, yeah.
It will subside and dissolve back into its source, which is the formless pure awareness.
Yeah. So
what is real in ego is that fundamental awareness I am.
As we experience ego in all the moments, so we are still experiencing this I am with other things. We still have background, we still have the I am.
So long as we're looking outwards, we're aware of ourselves as I am Srini or I am Michael, and we're consequently aware of everything else. When we when we turn our attention back to look at ourselves, we are so to speak, we are turning our back on all these other things. We're trying to hold on only to ourselves. And so we subside back into ourselves. Because what is real? The only thing that is real is I am. So ego it's called Chitjada Granti. We can also call it Sata Sat Granti. That is, the chit element is Sat. That is what is real. The Jada element is Asat. It's wholly unreal. It doesn't exist at all. So it's a knot formed by entangling the existent with the non-existent. If we hold on to that which actually exists, what doesn't exist will drop off. Because what doesn't exist cannot hold on to us. We are holding on to it.
We are holding it, yeah.
So if we hold what is real, what is unreal will drop off. That's why if you read Uludunapadu carefully, in so many places, Bhagavan is indicating that all we need to do to separate ourselves from everything else is to hold on to ourselves. He says, for example, in verse 9, the dyads and triads. The dyads means the pairs of opposites. The triads are the knower, the means of knowing, and what is known.
Yeah.
These dyads and triads always exist holding one thing. What is that one thing? Ego. Because it's only in the view of ego that there are dyads and triads. So that is one of the triad is the root. That is the knower. That is ego. There cannot be anything known without a knower. There cannot be anything known without a means of knowing it. Right. And there cannot be any means of knowing without a knower. Without a knower, there can be neither a means of knowing nor anything known. So ego is the base. So then in the next sentence, he says, if one investigates within the mind what that one is, that one means ego, they will drop off. That means the dyads and triads will drop off. Why will they drop off? Because they depend upon ego. When we investigate ego has nothing more to hold on to, so it subsides and everything else drops off. So like that, there's so many verses in Uludunapadu. In verse 14, he says, so long as there's a first person, the second and third persons will exist. If by one's investigating the reality of the first person ceases to exist, the second and third persons will come to an end, and the one that alone remains, shining as one, that is what we actually are. So he says it in so many ways. In I think verse 10 or something, without knowledge there's no ignorance. Without ignorance there's no knowledge. If one knows oneself by investigating to whom are knowledge and ignorance, they will drop off. They will cease to exist. So he's constantly, in verse 38, if you investigate who is the doer of action, doership will come to an end and all the three karmas will drop off. So everything will drop off if we investigate ourselves. Because other things are not holding us. We are holding them. Let go. By holding on to ourselves, we're letting go of everything else. Then, but here we have to be careful. Some people say, oh, if all we have to do is let go, then simply we go into nirvikalpa samadhi, we practice pranayama, we withdraw our attention from everything else, we go into nirvikalpa samadhi. That, Bhagavan says, is manolaya. Merely letting go of other things is insufficient. Every day when we fall asleep, we let go of everything because we're too tired to continue holding on. We let go. But we fall asleep and we wake up again the next day. Why? Because we haven't we weren't holding on to ourselves. So, if you let go of everything else, the mind will subside in manolaya. If you, instead of just letting go of everything else, if you hold on to yourself and thereby let go of everything else, the mind will subside in manonasa.
Is it let go is close to self surrender, like letting go?
That is what Bhagavan says in verse 26 of Uludunaptu. Handayundayan anatumundahum. If ego comes into existence, everything comes into existence. Ahandayendrail indra anatum. If ego doesn't exist, everything doesn't exist. Ahandaya yabamam. Ego itself is everything. Therefore, investigating what it is giving up everything. Why is it giving up everything? Because when you investigate what ego is, ego subsides and everything else subsides along with it. So we cannot surrender ourselves completely without investigating ourselves. Because so long as we're holding on to anything other than ourselves, the ego remains. So that's why Bhagavan said there are only two means: self-investigation and self-surrender. The reason he said it as two means is we can begin on the path of self-surrender even before we come to this path of vichara. That is, those who still take God to be something, in the preliminary stages of the bhakti marga, we take God to be something other than ourselves.
Right.
And because we love God, we want to be very close to God. So in order to be close to God, we have to give ourselves to God. So what stands between us and God is that we've got so many likes, dislikes, and so on. So the surrender begins with surrendering our will to the will of God. Not my will, but your will. Whatever be your will, that is happiness for me. Put me in hell. I'm perfectly happy. Because if that's your will, I'm happy to stay in hell for as long as you want me to stay in hell.
The complete surrender.
But that is not complete surrender yet, because we are only surrendering our will. But we cannot surrender our will completely without surrendering the one who has the will, because the very nature of ego is to have vasana, have vishaya vasanas, to have likes and dislikes and so on. There is no such thing as a desireless ego.
Yeah, because ego needs desires.
Yeah. So we need to surrender our will. But the more we surrender our will, the more we accept whatever happens as being his sweet will, the more the mind is thereby purified. The more the mind is purified, the more we see, who am I other than God? He is everything. So how can I be something separate from him? He's the infinite whole. Who am I claiming myself as a separate? I am separate from God. That is. So we begin to recognize, as the mind is purified, we recognize, but actually we are nothing other than God. God is nothing other than ourselves. So how to know God? Only by turning within and seeing what we ourselves actually are. So that is when the surrender becomes complete. Only when we investigate, who am I who have so much likes and dislikes and desires and attachments and so on? When we investigate for one who has a separate will, that one subsides, merges back into its source, which is God, and thy will be done. That is the state in which we are truly surrendering our will entirely to him. So long as we take God to be separate from ourselves, we cannot completely surrender our will. We can begin to surrender our will, but in order for our surrender to become complete, we must surrender not just our will, we must surrender ourselves. And we can surrender ourselves only by investigating who am I. Because so long as we're looking outwards,
we still have ego.
We are feeding and nourishing ego. Uru patri undu miko ongom. Grasping and feeding on form, it flourishes abundantly. So we need to let go of everything. Hold on only to ourselves. And there's another very nice thing. If we're following Bhakti Marga, when we reach the point where we're ready to turn within, we are told you are that, Tattvamasi. That God you are seeking outside is always shining in you as I. So when we know that God is so near and dear, so intimate with us, that he's ever shining in our heart as I, we have great love to hold on to I. Holding on to I is letting go of everything else. So it all ties together so beautifully. So this path of Atma-vichara that Bhagavan has taught us, that is the pinnacle of all spiritual paths is bhakti. That is, all other spiritual paths are leading towards bhakti. The pinnacle of the path of bhakti is surrender. Because true love for God, if you truly love someone, you don't think about what you can get from that person, what you can give them. So giving ourselves to God is the highest, that's the pinnacle of bhakti. And how can we give ourselves to God? Only by investigating ourselves. So this path of self-investigation is the pinnacle of the path of surrender, which is the pinnacle of the path of bhakti, which is the pinnacle of all other spiritual paths. So this is the culmination. That's why Bhagavan says, for example, in verse 10 of Upadesh Undya, Udita idatil, Odungi irita, subsiding or dissolving and being in the place from which one rose, that is the pure I am, adu karmamum bhakti, that is karma and bhakti. That is, karma there means nishkarmiya karma, part of karma yoga, as we call it, bhakti. That is yoga and jnana. So this is the culmination of all these paths. Likewise, in verse 14 of Uludanaptu Anabandham, the mere investigation to whom are karma, the action, vibhakti, separation, or vibhakti actually usually means separation. In this context, it means non-devotion. Viyogam, separation. Ajnanam, ignorance. To whom are all these? That mere investigation is itself karma, yoga, bhakti, and jnana. Because without an I, none of these can be practiced. So investigating who is this I who wants to do nishkarmiya karma? Who is this I who wants to have love for God? Who is this I who wants to do all these yogas? Who is this I who is, and now I'm ignorant, I want to attain knowledge? Who is this I? Investigating that, this I will merge back into its source, and the aim of all these paths will be achieved.
When I see the Bhakti Marga, most of the Bhakti Marga, it seems to be always separating God from ourselves, and we are treating God as separate object,
Yeah.
and it feels that it always has that separation. I never heard or experienced anybody saying that, oh, we got to the point where, oh, we completely surrendered and merged that into the self. It's always like, oh, he's somewhere up in the sky and listening to our prayers, and
that is appropriate at a certain level of spiritual development. In the primary school, you have to learn R, E, E, U, A, or ABC, or 1 times 1 is 2, 2 times 2 is 3, is 4, whatever. You have to learn all these things, but these become unnecessary once we. Why do we learn these things? So it's firmly imprinted in our heart. And then we go on further. We don't, when we're studying for our PhD, we're not still practicing our times table and repeating the alphabet every day. It becomes unnecessary. It becomes second nature to us. So it is necessary to have love for God. So the Bhakti Marga inculcates that love for God. At a certain stage, for the certain bhaktas, to say that God is myself, that's nothing more offensive than that. My Krishna, he is the supreme. How can I say Krishna himself says, Aham Atma Gudakesha, I am the self in everyone. But still, they like to have that separation because that's appropriate for them. But when they go deeper and deeper with it, into this path, when their love for Krishna matures, they'll come to understand Krishna. Yes, Krishna is that blue-skinned boy who played with the cowherd girls and did all these mischiefs and was the charioteer for Arjuna. Yes, that is Krishna. But Krishna is so much more than this. Krishna is the infinite whole. Who are we other than Krishna? To claim any existence other than Krishna we are belittling him. If I am separate from Krishna, then Krishna is not the infinite whole.
Correct.
Everything is Krishna except me. I'm separate. So when the bhakti matures, we understand. Bhagavan has expressed it beautifully in Arunachala Patikam, verse 7. What he says is, Beli baliti ne mampala uira virivuru buddha bodhi kangal Belioli unnei andri indru enin beru yan a ulan. What that means is, if bhutas, namely the 5 elements, namely space, air, fire, water, and earth, and bodhikas, everything that is made of these elements, which expand or spread out as many living beings, do not exist besides you, the space of light, that means the light of pure awareness, Veru yana ulan. Who else am I? So when everything is you, how can I be something separate from you? He expresses it so beautifully. Vimala, blemishless, a pure one. Beli adai ulatu verara vilangan. If you shine without another, without a second, without something other than yourself, in the heart, at that space, that is the space of pure awareness, veru ena veli varuvena. Who else am I who come out as if another? That is, we seem to be something other from him, but how come? Who is this I who comes out claiming to be other? I am separate from God. Then he ends by saying a beautiful prayer. Veli varaya Arunachala. Come out, Arunachala. Aban talayil virimala padatine vete. Placing your vast lotus feet on his head. On his head means on the head of this eye, but rises as if another. So this is the point. This is where when this understanding comes, this is when we change from the Anya Bhava, having devotion to God as if he's something other than ourselves, to an Anya Bhava, the recognition of an ahamahum. He is I, as Bhagavan says in verse 8 of Upadeshundya. Rather than Anya Bhava, meditating on him as something other than ourselves, Ananya Bhava, in which he is I, is the best of all. So that change from Anya Bhava to Ananya Bhava is what he describes beautifully in this verse.
It reminds me that Akshara Manamalai, it's showing how Bhagavan is praying to the Lord, the Mount Arunachala. It feels like I think he's giving us that kind of teachings, because he doesn't need as realized soul, as self. He's already I am, but he came out of that form, and he's pretending to be a devotee and just giving it, saying that I am praying to Arunachala. It just shows how he is, how he wants us to pray to Arunachala.
Yeah, that is in Uludu Napadu, Upadeshundya, Atma-Vidya, Nana, all these works, he's giving us very clear pointers. In Aksharamlai, he is showing us the actual application of those pointers, how it actually is to be a devotee. Because what is the key to success in this path? Bhagavan often said, Bhakti is the mother of jnana. Because without love, that is, what is Bhagavan asking? Bhagavan is asking a lot from us. He's asking us to give ourselves wholly to him. Why should we give ourselves to him? We will only agree to give ourselves to him if we have all-consuming love for him.
Correct.
So that love is absolutely essential. Without love, that is, our heart has to melt with love for him. That actually application of this in practice, Bhagavan often used to say, the whole spiritual path is a battle fought within our own will. The battle between our Vishaya vasanas on one hand and the Sat vasana on the other hand. This is what is depicted in the Puranas as the Deva Sura Yuddha. So many wars are described in the Puranas between the gods and the demons. That is all allegorical. It's all about this battle that is going on in our own heart between our liking to go outwards and the true love to turn back within. And that is what that inner battle is what Bhagavan depicts in Aksharamlai.
Yeah. So beautiful.
So beautiful. So beautiful.
It just brings the tears, and it's like it just like the way that he prays, or the way that he devotes. It just like there's no words how we can describe. So beautiful. It's like pure love comes out of Bhagavan.
Yes.
As if Bhagavan is like a person, but he is not a person, but the way he gives us the teachings.
He is teaching by example. He is setting us the example. What a struggle we have to go. We have to be ready to face this struggle. Yes. That is, Aksharamlai is the struggle of the soul who is seeking God.
It's a very struggle. Even any waking moment, it's a struggle.
But where lies the obstacle? The obstacle doesn't lie in the world. The obstacle doesn't lie outside. No. But the obstacle lies within us. Our own vasanas have a problem. So there's no shortcut. This is the shortcut. There's no shorter cut than this shortcut. This is the direct path. You can't have any shorter path than the direct path. But in order to follow this direct path, we have to battle against our own vasanas. That is, we will fail so many times.
Correct.
Every time our attention moves away from ourselves, it is under the sway of our Vishaya vasanas.
Correct.
So every time our attention moves away from ourselves, we have lost another battle, but doesn't matter. So long as we keep on fighting, victory is assured. As Bhagavan makes so clear in Aksharamala and in so many other places, all that is required is perseverance. However great a sinner one may be, he says in Nana, however great a sinner one may be, if instead of lamenting, oh, I'm a sinner, how can I attain the other shore? How can I get to the other shore? In other words, how can I attain liberation? How can I be saved from this vast ocean of samsara? I'm such a great sinner. Instead of lamenting like that, if one is steadfast in Swarupa Dhyana, in self-attentiveness, we will certainly be saved. We will certainly be reformed.
Yeah, initially when I see this bondage with all the worldly life or with the family life, I was looking at, oh, it's all obstacles when you go towards this one. But more and more when I look at it, it just like, I think Bhagavan gave, this is what it's needed for your situation. This is the way you can turn inwards. For me, for somebody, maybe sannyas is the way. For somebody, just
but
like
for the majority of us, sannyasa is very easy.
It's not.
But some of us are hard nuts to crack. So we have to take to this difficult path of samsara, of the grahastha life.
Yeah, it appears like in the beginnings, it appears like so difficult. Oh, how do you deal with all these relationships and so many the bonding? But when you go to Bhagavan, if you ask Bhagavan, he says, oh, this is the way to go. You feel it, and there is a lot of things that you get it from this samsaric life, all this family life. They'll show you, because maybe my kid will show me, oh, this is not the way. He'll give you the situation that will make you turn inward.
We will be kept very humble. We have to be very, very humble in this grahastha life.
And one of the other thing is, when I see ego, all the world appears in the view of ego.
Yes.
Everything what I perceive in this outside world, is it maybe inside world, like mind also has the same thing. It's a self and ego. Can we take this ego as like a false lens, something like a lens that is the clouded form of I am, and then we just take out that lens?
We can take it. I mean, there are different ways of explaining it, but actually it's more than that. Because ego is not just a lens through which we are seeing. Ego itself is that which is seeing through the lens.
But it's so kind of like,
there's no analogy but perfectly fits ego.
But we're just investigating.
Ego is an extremely slippery customer. Ego is dominating the whole show, like the Mapale Toran, like the bridegroom's friend, dominating the whole show until we start to investigate it. Then he slips away.
So there is no point in looking at, trying to see why this is like this, why this is like this. If we can hold on to I am, then everything else becomes irrelevant.
That is, Bhagavan has given us explanation, but whatever explanations Bhagavan has given us are very practical explanations. He's also explained to us why we shouldn't be seeking answers to everything else. That is, in many of the older texts, they go into elaborate descriptions about how the world comes into existence. The whole Sankhya thing of from Purusha comes Prakriti, and then all the Mahatattva and Tanmatras and all this, so many elaborate explanations. Bhagavan says this is like analyzing the hair in the barber shop. It's all rubbish. We need to discard it. So doesn't matter how the world came into existence. All we know, when I rise as ego, the world appears. When I don't rise as ego, there's no world at all. That's all we need to know. So simple. So then we can forget about the world. We can forget about everything. The only thing we need to know, what is real? In all this vast show, what is real? Only one thing, I am. Hold on to that I am, everything else will drop off.
Yeah, it becomes so clear when we see Atma-Vidya. It says, Ati Sulabham. I was looking at it and said, how can it be so easy? But we take it as so difficult because all this world is seems to be so real. Yeah. But when I look at it, it's like so easy. But we miss that basic point of
that is why in Murugan's Anupalavi, he says, what is so real? What can be more real, more obviously real than I am, than ourselves? Even the Amlaka on the palm is unclear compared to that. But one thing, it is so blindingly obvious. And then Bhagavan carries on the same theme in the first verse. Though oneself always exists, as indubitably real, this body and world appear as if real. Okay. Why do they appear? It's all only thought. So if this dark thought, this unreal thought, which is made of unreal darkness, comes to an end, the truth will shine forth. And then what is the root of all this thought? Then second verse he says, the thought I am this body is the one string on which all the other thoughts are strung. So how do we get rid of all thoughts? Cut this string.
Cut the string. By
investigating who am I. So he, in that song, he makes it so simple. Because it is simple. He's not making it simple. He's just pointing out to us how simple it is.
Yeah. But because of I think you can call it as Vishaya vasanas, it is like, it gives like little pleasures at that moment. It feels like so real and we hang on to it and we said, oh, all what we are looking at outside is so real. I can see it when I have the thought, when I don't attend to that self and attach to the thought. After a while, when I come back and say, what I did all this 10 minutes or 20 minutes, when I come back, it doesn't have any essence of it, all that outside things. It's like, what did I do all this 10 minutes or 20 minutes? Like, it doesn't give anything. It just like something comes and it just disappears.
Yes.
I still feel like, oh, I missed that point. Again, come back.
Yeah.
So I can see more and more and say, but if I can recognize in the first place, if I cannot let it go far away, if I can attend, as soon as the thought comes, if I can hold on to I am, then I think it's probably far better. But sometimes we just miss it and we let it, we have like strong desires and things and we just let it
Why we miss it is because of the strength of our Vishaya vasanas, because we've got so much liking to attend to other things.
How do you weaken? Is it weaken in the sense like, if you have like a love for I am, it automatically weakens?
It automatically, because vasanas have no strength of their own. Vasanas are jada.
Yeah, we give the strength, ego.
Yeah, so they derive their strength from us. If we allow ourselves to be swayed by a particular Vishaya vasana, the more we allow ourselves to be swayed by it, the stronger it becomes. We can see this with some people have obsessive thoughts.
Correct.
They're obsessed by cleanliness, for example. They have to be cleaning all the time. And the more they're obsessed with it, the stronger that obsession becomes. Or people have fears, or they have most worldly people, they're obsessed with earning money.
Correct.
They want more and more, however much, even when they have billions, even when they have hundreds of billions, they're still so obsessed with earning more and more. Because the more you allow yourself to be swayed by any Vishaya vasana, the more you are strengthening that Vishaya vasana. So
you're fueling it. You're feeling that you're putting the ghee onto that.
Yes, exactly. You're pouring petrol on the fire.
Petrol. Yeah.
So the only way to this is very simple to understand. That is, vasanas are our inclinations. The more we allow ourselves to be swayed by an inclination, the stronger that becomes. The more we avoid being swayed by it, the weaker it becomes. So all vasanas can be divided into two. There's, on the one hand, there's Vishaya vasanas, the vast majority of vasanas. On the other side, there's one lone sat vasana. So that sat vasana is the liking to turn within and to be as we actually are. So more we turn within, the more the sat vasana is strengthened and the Vishaya vasanas are weakened.
Yeah, when we have no choice to do good and bad, then we should always carry on to the subhavasanas. Like when you have no choice, or when it's already there and you got to make the choice, and we should hold on to the subhavasanas.
Yeah, but subhavasanas and asubhavasanas, generally when we use the term, it is the less harmful Vishaya vasanas we call subhavasanas. The more harmful ones we call asubhavasanas.
Still harmful one.
Yes, but even the subha Vishaya vasanas are still harmful. The only truly good vasana is sat vasana. And the stronger sat vasana becomes, the more the remaining Vishaya vasanas will tend to be more subha. We can't have a strong sat vasana and also be very selfish and mean and so on. So the more we strengthen this sat vasana, the more our Vishaya vasanas will become subha in nature. That is, the first ones to drop off will be the asubha vasanas, because we don't allow our mind to, even when our mind is going outwards, we don't allow it to go after the bad thoughts or bad behaviors or so on. But the more we go within by investigating who am I, our aim is not to be a good person, but we will naturally become a better person to the extent to which our mind is purified by turning within.
My aim is not to be a person at all.
Not to be a person at all. But becoming a good person is an inevitable byproduct of following this path.
When we be as I am, all this doing happens on its own. The things that happens with the body mind, the thing that we do outside, does it happen on its own as a good karmas?
That is, body, speech, and mind are the instruments of action. In order for our prarabdha to unfold, certain actions of mind, speech, and body are necessary. Those actions will be made to do by God.
Okay.
But not all the actions we do are actions we're made to do by God. And even the actions we're made to do by God are often actions that we would want to do anyway. Because some things in the prarabdha we like, some things we don't like. So while we are experiencing the prarabdha, while we are being made to do certain acts, or while our mind, speech, and body are being made to do certain actions, we are also acting under the sway of our vasanas.
Correct.
Those actions that we do under the sway of our vasana, our Vishaya vasanas, are what are called agamya. The more we are turning within, the less we will be swayed by our Vishaya vasanas, therefore the less we will be doing agamya. If we keep our attention wholly focused within, then only the actions that we make, that our mind, speech, and body are made to do by God, will be done by them. Because we'll not be swayed by our vasanas, our Vishaya vasanas.
When I look at Bhagavan, after he got that enlightenment, or we can call it as that state of mind when he saw the fear of death, whatever happens after that point, it just happens on its own, but it is not Bhagavan doing it. Bhagavan in the sense is not like a person doing it.
That ego that was aware of itself as I am Venkataraman, that ego was a very highly mature ego. When the fear of death came, it turned within and it merged forever in its source. It ceased to exist forever. Then what remained shining through that person whom we call Bhagavan, that is the true Bhagavan. That is our own real nature, the pure, that Atma-Swarupa, that infinite ocean of love and clarity and compassion and whatever we want to call it, that vast ocean of Satchidananda. That was what was shining through that form. There was no ego there at all.
Yeah.
Bhagavan sometimes used very nice analogies. One day, someone had brought a radio, and that radio was installed in the old hall. And sometimes they used to play the radio when there's some nice singing or something is going on, some nice Carnatic music or something. Sometimes the radio will be played. And one day Bhagavan pointed at the radio and said, "See this radio. This is we hear such nice singing coming from this radio. But if we open it up, we don't find anyone inside." Likewise with the body of and mind of Banyani. It seems that there's some very nice things are coming from it. But if we open it up, there's no one inside. There's no ego there.
It's a pure being.
Pure being, yes.
But because we are seeing from the ego, he appears in the form, in a physical form.
In the view of Bhagavan, there is no body or world. But because we take ourselves to be a body, we see him as a body.
But when we remain as I am, then we don't probably that, I don't know, maybe that.
When we remain as I am, there is only I am.
And there is
because it's only in the view of ego that all other things seem to exist.
Yeah. But when we go I am, there is no like a Bhagavan I am and Srini I am. It's just like one. No. It's like one infinite.
I am is one. I am is indivisible. That is Bhagavan. That is the Ramana Swarupa. That is the real form of Bhagavan.
Yeah.
But so long as we look outwards, we see the form of Bhagavan, and naturally we feel love for him because he's given us these very precious teachings, telling us to turn within and to find him in our own heart.
One of the things that I would like to ask is, we do a lot of karmas from the child when we are born and until the death. Probably towards end of lives, people probably started realizing, oh, all this that I've done so far for last so many years, it doesn't have the true meaning. It just comes and goes. It just like I did a lot of things thinking that's so real, and one day they're going to die. But we as an individual, as a body mind, most of us has that kind of holding on to the body and say, oh, death is like, oh, it just like, it won't happen to me. Even though we see a lot of people dying, even though that I'm going to die one day.
Yeah.
But why does there is a strong holding to this, this body and say, this is still real? Is it something that you can show some light?
Very, very, very simple reason. What is real? I am. What is eternal? I am. So long as we take this body to be I, even though we know this body is going to die, but our own death never seems real to us. So we go on living our life, even when we're in our old age, when we can't even stand up, we still live as if we're going to live forever. We know, yes, I'm going to die, but at the same time, it's not our own death, our own non-existence can never seem real to us. Bhagavan said, even in a battlefield, when a soldier sees his comrades dying around him, he will be fearing injury and everything. But the fact that he will die, but he will cease, the next moment he could cease to exist, that never seems real, in spite of all the danger, because we never cease to exist. The body will die, certainly, but we don't die. But so long as we take the body to be I, we superimpose our own reality and our own immortality upon this body. That is why, so long as we are dreaming, dreams seem to be real. Because
this is a dream.
When we're dreaming, we experience a dream body as I. Since I is real, the dream body seems to be real. And since the dream body is a part of the dream world, the whole dream world seems to be real. But as soon as we leave that dream and come to this dream, our identification with that dream body is severed. And we thereby immediately recognize, oh, it was just a dream. It wasn't real. It was just a mental fabrication. It doesn't take us time when we wake up. Oh, was that real or not real? We don't have to think about it. We instantly recognize, oh, it was just a dream, not real at all.
Yeah.
Because our identification with the body has been, our identification has been switched from that body to this body.
But even Bhagavan says, even the waking state itself is a long dream.
It is a long dream, yes, yes.
In the view of I am, in the view of pure being.
Not in the view of, it is a dream. Plain simple. We don't have to say, in the view of I am, there's no dream at all. There's neither a dreamer nor any dream.
Yeah. And other thing is,
sometimes people ask, when we wake up from a dream, we immediately recognize that that was a dream. But when we go from this dream, this present dream, into a dream at night, we don't recognize that this was just a dream. Why is that?
Yeah.
The reason is because that is a dream within this dream.
Oh.
When we are dreaming, we still think, I am Srini, I am Michael. We seem to be the same person. So the dream seems to be a continuity of this waking, but that is that sub-dream seems to be a continuation of this dream.
Yeah, so it's a dream in the dream.
Yes, it's a dream in a dream. The whole of our present life is one long dream. Because it's a long dream, it's interrupted by periods of sleep, and the sleep is interrupted by periods of small dreams within that. But that doesn't mean that this dream is any more real than those dreams. They're all wholly unreal.
Yeah.
It's all entirely a mental fabrication.
One other question about the practice of self-inquiry. Some texts, somewhere I heard that in order to practice, the prerequisite needs to be, we need to quieten the mind, like through some, any spiritual practice. We need to make it mind quiet, then it is suitable enough to do the self-inquiry. But I never remember Bhagavan giving that kind of advice and say, oh, you have to first start quieting the mind, then go to self-inquiry.
What is the most effective way to quieten the mind? Attend to yourself. So it's putting the cart before the horse, saying you first have to quieten the mind. But for those who are much inclined to the practice of yoga, in yoga's chitta vritti nirodha. Yoga is all about quietening down the mind. So some people are much attracted to that. Bhagavan said, okay, if you want to practice pranayama or any of these yoga practices, it's okay to practice up to a certain extent, but don't take it too far, because if you take it too far, you'll end up in laya. And that layer, that layer is given a nice fancy name, Nirvikalpa Samadhi, but it's no more useful than sleep. That's why he told that story of the yogi who went into Nirvikalpa Samadhi for 300 years and came back with the same thought he'd got in. So the vasanas are not destroyed in sleep. The vasanas are not destroyed in or weakened in Nirvikalpa Samadhi. So Bhagavan said, if you like to do pranayama to quieten the mind, by all means do so, but before you allow the mind to become too quiescent, before you allow it to subside in layer, you need to send it on the path of investigation.
Yeah.
This is what he implies in Upadeshundya. In verses 11 and 12, he says why the mind is subdued by controlling the breath. By restraining the breath, you restrain the mind. And then in verse 13, he gives a warning. But the dissolution of mind is of two kinds, laya and nasa.
Yes.
What is in laya will rise again. What is in nasa will not rise again. And then in the next verse, verse 14, he says, the mind which will become quiescent by restraining the breath, only if that mind is sent on the orvari will its form die. Orvari, superficial meaning, people often translate it the one path. But which one path? The answer is contained in the word itself, because or is both a form of oru. Oru means one. But before a vowel, it becomes or. But in poetry, you can sometimes use or instead of oru. So one meaning is one, but there's a much deeper meaning. Or is the root of a verb that means to investigate. So or vari means the investigating path. In other words, the path of self-investigation. In order to bring about the destruction of the mind, you have to send it on the path of investigation. That's why Bhagavan says in the 8th paragraph, he concludes the 8th paragraph of Nana, therefore pranayama is an aid to restrain the mind, but it will not bring about manonasa.
Yeah.
So to achieve manonasa, the only way is Atma-vichara.
Yeah. So we don't need to go that step by step and say, fight on the mind, then do it. So
no,
we go to self-inquiry, automatically mind will be quietened.
Yes. For those who are inclined in that way, Bhagavan, if you go and say, Bhagavan, I'm doing pranayama, can I continue? They'll say, yes, that's good, continue. Just quieten your mind and then turn it within. So he's always trying to push us in the right direction, but he won't discourage us from doing. People came to Bhagavan and said, Bhagavan, I'm doing Gayatri mantra. Is it good? Oh, what is better than Gayatri? Bhagavan said. That is appropriate to that person, because that person, if that person comes to Bhagavan and says, Bhagavan, I've been doing Gayatri for so many years, I don't seem to be getting any benefit. Bhagavan would say, yes, who is doing the Gayatri? Find out who is doing the Gayatri. Then you'll get the benefit. So Bhagavan always tries to push us towards self-investigation. But if we are much attached to other practices, he's not going to discourage us. He will encourage us, yes, if that's what you like to do, go on doing it. But it's not necessary. Bhagavan never of his own accord recommended pranayama or any other means to quieten the mind. Because what can be a more effective way to quieten the mind? What is mental activity? It is the outward going flow of the mind. If you want to quieten the mind, what's the most effective way to do so? Stop allowing it to go outwards, turn it back within. So all this pranayama, all these things are totally unnecessary. It's okay for those who have a liking for that, but once we've been attracted to Bhagavan's path, we can forget all these other practices.
So I think it's, I feel it is like, some people, it is just a level of understanding. For them, it is necessary, and it is not like a prescription. It is not something that we have to go through this process to get to self-inquiry.
No. That is the very fact that we are attracted to Bhagavan's path means we must have done all these other things in the past. We must have either been following Bhakti Marga or Yoga Marga.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we wouldn't have gained the mental clarity to be attracted to this path.
Correct,
So we shouldn't put down other paths. They're necessary. For those, it's necessary. We all have to go through that. But the fact that we've been drawn to this path means we've gone through that already. We don't have to go back to that again.
Yeah.
So Bhagavan often said that all other paths lead to this path. Once you've been drawn to this path, the other paths become unnecessary.
Yeah, I can see it when I look back and look at other people doing it. It feels like so. It's not irrelevant. It's like, oh, why it is so much effort on these things? Why people are doing so much into this kind of external activities like pujas and these things. But when I look at the explanations, oh, it is necessary for this, in this lifetime. For them, it is probably necessary for this time. It is, and then it is not that I'm more superior or there. It is just like whoever at that level, I think it's necessary.
Yeah.
And
if you're studying PhD and you go to a primary school and tell children, oh, why do you need to do all this ABC and this times table? Obviously, at that stage, that is necessary. That's appropriate.
Yeah.
So you go there and you say, yes, I also used to do this, and see where it's got me now. So go on, do it with all sincerity. You encourage them.
Yes. And other question I had was experiences in this self-enquiry or in the spiritual path. Some people I listen or I heard about, oh, I get a glimpse of the bliss and I get like, oh, this is like so peaceful. But I always look at it as like, this comes and goes again. Is it like an illusion of Maya? Is it something that
whatever comes will go, whatever appears will disappear? We are not seeking any experiences, because experiences are for whom? For ego. We are seeking to know the truth of the experiencer. Who am I? So people who attach importance to experiences. Oh, I felt great peace. I had this very elevated feeling. I was in this state of ecstasy. All these are unnecessary distractions. In one of Shankara's texts, he said, what are the distractions or the obstacles on the path? One of them he mentions is bliss. that is... If you practice yoga and other things, you can get into very blissful states of different types of samadhi. They can be very blissful, very pleasant. But that's all a distraction, because those are all vishayas. Anything that appears and disappears is a vishaya. So we need to turn our attention away from all vishayas. So let any experience come. Let God himself appear to us. To whom does this God appear? Turn our attention back to ourselves.
So these are not indications of like progress and so, oh, I was able to get some progress on this one. It is definitely...
No, we shouldn't be attaching importance to this is a sign that we haven't yet understood what this path is about. Once someone who not understanding who is Bhagavan, taking him to be a great Swami or something, he asked him, Swami, if God appeared before you, if Shiva appeared before you or whatever, what would you pray for? Bhagavan said, I would ask him to stop appearing because I don't want a God who appears and disappears. I want a God who is ever shining. That God is I am.
Yeah. And in the beginning that I got the sense of like, this is like ego is the I am is the like light that shines on the ego, and it gives that form and everything. So we need to be the light. We need to be the light which shines through in this human form,
Yes.
or in this form.
Yes, it's explained in different ways. One way in which it's explained, that is, the technical term that is used in Sanskrit is chidabhasa. The literal chit means awareness. It means the pure awareness. Abhasa means the basic meaning of abhasa is a likeness or a semblance. But a secondary meaning is a reflection. Because if you look in a mirror, what do you see? The reflection you see is a likeness of yourself. So because Chidabhasa is sometimes explained as a reflection, it is sometimes said the mind or ego is like the moon. In order to see things at night, you need the moonlight. But the moon is getting its light from where? The moon has no light of its own. It's reflecting the light of the sun.
Yeah.
But in order to know the sun, you don't need the moonlight. So now we are using the reflected light, we are seeing all this world. We are seeing all the objects. The same reflected light by which we are seeing all objects, if we turn that reflected light back on the subject, that is like a mirror. If you've got a mirror, if you hold it in the sunshine and shine it and direct it into a dark cave or something, you'll illumine the cave.
Correct.
But if you turn the mirror back to the sun, the reflected light merges back into the original light. Likewise, if we turn our attention within, this reflected light will merge and drown in the real light, which is the pure awareness I am.
Yes. And Bhagavan often refers to as it is being, not doing.
Yes. Yes.
Can you show some light on what? Yeah.
What is doing? All doing, there are three instruments of action: mind, speech, and body. From where does the action begin? It begins from mind.
Correct.
That is, we think a thought, and then we say something, then we do something. So but all action of speech and body originates from within the mind. What is mental activity? Mental activity is a movement of our attention away from ourselves towards anything else. That is what we call thought or mental activity. Chitta-vritti.
Correct.
So, because when we attend to something other than ourselves, that attention, instead of resting in its source, it's moving away from ourselves towards something else. So our mind is going out towards the world, so to speak. I mean, that's how we describe it. The whole world's actually in the mind, but because we use the term mind in different senses. Mind in the sense of attention is going out towards the world. When we turn our attention back within, it's not actually moving anywhere. We are simply, instead of allowing the attention to go out towards the world, we are retaining the attention in its source. So we are not doing anything, we are just being. That's one way of explaining it. Another way of explaining it is all activity begins with the rising of ego. That is, the first activity is we rise as ego. As soon as we rise as ego, our attention starts flowing outwards. When we turn our attention away from other things back towards ourselves, what happens to ego? Ego subsides. So attending to ourselves is not an activity, it is a cessation of activity. And when we attend to ourselves keenly enough, we remain in the state of being. That is why in verse 8 of Upadeshundya, Bhagavan says, but better than Anya Bhava, meditating on God as if he's something other than oneself, Ananya Bhava, in which you understand he is I. Ananya Bhava means meditating on what is not other, What is not other? Only we are not. What is not other than ourselves? Only we are not other than ourselves. So Ananya Bhava means meditating on what is not other than oneself. That means meditating on oneself alone. In other words, it's just another way of describing Atma-vichara. And he says, that is an eternal. That is the best of all. Among all the practices of bhakti, the best practice is to attend to ourselves. Then in the next verse, he says, Bhava Balatinal, by the strength of that Bhava. Which Bhava? The Ananya Bhava, self-attentiveness. Anya Bhava, Bhava Balatinal, by the strength of that meditation, Bhavanatita Sat Bhava Tirutale, being in that Sat Bhava, which is beyond bhavana, which beyond all meditation. Sat Bhava means our true being. Mm-hmm. Being in our true being is Parabhakti Tattva. That is the supreme devotion. So, but how do we get in? How do we remain in that? How do we be as in Sat Bhava? By the strength of bhavana, by the strength of the Ananya Bhava, by the strength of meditation on ourself alone. So from that we have to infer when we attend to anything other than ourselves, that is a karma. Attending to ourselves is not a karma. It is a cessation of karma, a subsidence of the doer of all karma, namely ego.
But it feels like even when we are attaining it, it still feels that it is still doing some attention.
Yes, yeah, but because we
thinking from
because of the strength of our Vishaya vasanas, we are constantly having an inclination to attend to things other than ourselves. So since by holding on to self-attentiveness, we are resisting that inclination to attend to other things. It seems to be a work, but the work we are doing is not doing anything. It is just being. It takes effort to be. Well, when I say it takes effort to be doesn't take any effort at all. But so long as we rise as ego, the nature of ego is to be constantly doing. So to just be, it takes effort for ego because its vasanas, its inclinations are constantly to attend to something other than itself.
The effort is to bring back the attention to self.
Yes.
That is the effort.
Yes. And not only to bring the attention back, to hold the attention onto ourselves, because there's constantly the inclination to go outwards.
So it is.
Bit like if you've got, sometimes children, if they go to the beach, they have beach balls, big plastic balls, and they play on the beach. If you take a beach ball and you try and press it beneath the surface of the water, it takes a lot of effort. And when you try and push it down, it jumps up this way. When you try and push it, it jumps up that way. It keeps on trying to, because it's got so much inclination to float on the surface, not to go down. Likewise, our attention has inclination to float on the surface. So when we try to turn within, the more we try to go within, the more pressure there is from Vishaya vasanas to go outwards. So it does take effort. Bhagavan said, even to that is, self-investigation is just being. But in order to just be, takes intense effort, but entire mind needs to be focused on attending only to us, attending only to oneself. It takes effort. But once we go deep enough, ego will be destroyed, and then we will find what we were previously holding on to with effort is sahaja. It's effortless. It's our own nature.
Until that point, it is a struggle.
Yes.
It just goes outwards, and we need to pull it back to inward.
We were talking earlier about Aksharamlaya. That's what Aksharamlaya is all about.
Struggle
is talking in so many different ways. Usutulambida, the mind which wanders around the world. Usutrulam bidadu unne kandu, seeing you without interruption. so that the mind which is wandering around the world may see you without interruption, show your beauty. That is for the mind that has strong Vishaya vasanas. This world looks so beautiful. There's so many interesting things, so many pleasures and so many interesting things. There's politics and there's the news and there's the wars and there's the sports and there's the prospect of getting a promotion at work and buying a new car or having a bigger house or having more money in the bank. There's so many interesting things out there. The world is such a beautiful place. So long as we lack viveka, the world will seem beautiful. Because why? Because we have desire for things. I have desire for lots of money. I want to have $1 million. When I get $1 million, my desire is satisfied. Temporarily, my mind will be quietened. Oh, I've got $1 million. I'll be happy for a short while. But then again, my neighbor's got $10 million. So a million, what is this $1 million? I need $10 million. So there's no desire seems to give us iotas of pleasure, but the pleasure that it gives us, as soon as we achieve that pleasure, it slips away from us. It's further away. So we have to go further. We're constantly seeking it. So in order to stop the mind going outwards, we need to cultivate that love to look within. That's what Bhagavan means when he says, show your beauty. When we experience the more we look within, the more we will see, the more we will experience the happiness of just being as we actually are. That is Arunachala revealing his beauty to us.
Yeah.
And the more we experience that happiness, that peace by looking within, the more liking we will have to look within.
Yes, yeah.
So Akshamala is such a practical text. It's really the nitty-gritty of applying what all that Bhagavan has taught us in other works. The nitty-gritty of applying that in practice is taught to us by Bhagavan in Akshamala.
Yes. And how do we take all this external activity that needs to be done, whatever needs to be done, without attaching it, without attached to those things? Because we got to do some things in this life. Until we die, we had to do a lot of things, right? Or we might have to do. Not attaching and say, oh, this is me doing it. This is something that consciously planning to do it or making like so much effort doing it. Is it something that if I hold on to what happens? We can just let Bhagavan made it happen?
Absolutely. That is our life in this world, all our activities seem so important so long as we allow our mind to go outwards. The more we turn within, the more we will recognize that all these things are outward things. They're happening automatically by Bhagavan's grace. We need not be concerned about this.
It's like a sun.
For example, you have a family, you've got children, you've got to look after your children. It may seem, but I've got so much responsibility. I've got children, I've got to work hard and everything. But the more you turn within, the more you will recognize that all these things that is, you were born with a certain prarabdha. Your children are born with a certain prarabdha. Whatever is to be provided, whatever needs to be provided for them, Bhagavan is providing. And if it's necessary for you to work, Bhagavan will make you, mean for mind, speech, and body. Bhagavan will make the mind, speech, and body do whatever is necessary. So leave it all to him. The only concern you have is to turn within. As Bhagavan says, however much burden in the 13th paragraph, after saying that being so vigilantly self-attentive, but we give not even the slightest room to the rising of any other thought, is giving ourselves to God. He says in the first sentence. Then in the next sentence, he says, however much burden one places on God, he bears all of it.
Yes, yes.
So even the burden of thinking, we can leave that burden to him. And then he says in the next sentence, when that one Parameshwara Shakti is driving all karyas, why should we, instead of yielding ourselves to it, be constantly thinking it's necessary to do like this, it's necessary to do like that? We can leave what he knows what's necessary to do. And if it's necessary for your mind, speech, or body to do that, he will make them do it. Leave it to him. Then he gives the beautiful analogy of the passenger on the train.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah.
When you're traveling on a train, the train is carrying you and all your luggage. You don't need to carry your luggage on your head. If you want to, you're free to carry your luggage on your head. No one's going to stop you, but you're going to suffer. Ain kashta paravendam. Why to suffer, Bhagavan asks, carrying your luggage on your head, instead of putting it aside and traveling sukhamai, happily. So Bhagavan wants us always to take the easy path, the happy path.
Why is it the ego wants to take the credit and say, oh, this is me doing it? Is it
not only the ego wants to take, I mean, that may be part of it, but so long as we have sense of doership, it's I who am doing this. If I don't do this, then what's going to happen? How am I going to pay the bills? How am I going to support my family? Therefore, I have to do it. So we give so much reality to its external life, but we are eagerly jumping outwards. We need to cultivate, but by patient and persistent practice, in the midst of our day-to-day activities, we need to slowly withdraw our mind from other things. Focus it more and more on ourselves. The more we cultivate the love to be self-attentive, the more we will naturally be unconcerned about other things, because we will recognize that everything else is being taken care of by him. Even all the work we do, we may be seemingly working hard to take care of our family. But how are we doing that work? It's only by his grace we are doing it. So leave it to him. He knows how to extract from his mind, speech, and body whatever work they need to do.
If you have that kind of turning inwards, this effort seems to be like so light. Whatever we are doing, it just happens naturally. Yes. By body, mind, speech. And we don't get the kind of like so tired and yes, this is like me doing it. If it just let that Bhagavan's grace comes in.
Exactly.
Yeah, I can see some of the instances.
Bhagavan's path is such a beautiful path. It's such a simple path. The only thing is we must have a liking to follow it. But the more we appreciate what a wonderful treasure it is Bhagavan has given us in the form of this simple practice of self-investigation. All we need to do is to hold on to self-attentiveness. Whatever else the mind, speech, and body may be doing, we shouldn't forget I am. Of course, we're always aware I am, but we usually are overlooking it because we're so interested in other things. We need to take more and more interest in just being aware I am.
Yeah. And one last question I would say. When I look at my kids, when they're so little and when they get to my age and old age, and also I as an ego mind, I see that, we are making them to attract all these external things, and then they get into this Maya so real. They believe, everything is real. Is it something that, because we are into Bhagavan's path, something that we can slowly, not bringing them to Bhagavan, but giving that kind of light and say, hey, this is not, giving kind of some guidance, saying that this is not real. Not telling in a direct way, but giving kind of some form of story, some form of examples.
Yes. We can do it, but we have to do it very gently, because in Bhagavan's path, we are not to give teachings to anyone unasked. Bhagavan never gave teachings unasked.
Correct.
So we need to follow his example. If people ask us, if they're interested, yes, we can say. But as a father with your children, you can be gently dropping hints about Bhagavan's teachings, but you have to do so very gently, because now they seem to us to be our children, but actually they're all jivas who have been coming and going so many times. For some reason, they are born as our children, but they have their own prarabdha, their own set of vasanas and everything. So we shouldn't expect, but if our children are drawn to Bhagavan's path, that's very nice. But we shouldn't expect that.
Yeah. If they're ready, when they're ready, probably they will get it anyway.
Yeah.
And we don't need to push them, or we don't need to. Yeah.
Some of us are drawn to this path very young. Some people are drawn to it later in life. Some people, it's only in old age they begin to think about these things. But some people never, even till their dying day, they're not thinking about these things. They're still thinking about worldly things. So it's all, that is, we are all Bhagavan's children. So our children are Bhagavan's children as much as we are his children. So let us leave them in his care. He knows what is best. For some reason, those jivas, he has given them to be born in your house, and you are inclined on this spiritual path. So it may have an influence on them. Okay. But if it doesn't have an influence on them, if you find that they turn out to be completely worldly, don't feel bad about it. That is, they have to go through that. I mean, we all go through so many lifetimes, and to work out so many. We all have vasanas. We have to work out these things, and then we follow our desires, and then we're disappointed. And sooner or later, slowly, it dawns on us. But fulfilling our desires is not the recipe for happiness.
And if they're not. If one is not get to the pure being, and they will be born again, it is just like a dream ends, and just one more dream comes in.
Yes. We're all on a long journey. Once we've come to Bhagavan's path, we're nearing the end of our journey.
Yes.
But just because we're nearing the end of a journey doesn't mean that we have to expect the same of our children.
Correct.
We don't know where on their journey they are.
Yeah.
Leave it to Bhagavan.
Yeah.
We have to leave ourselves to Bhagavan. How do we say that? Is if we can't even surrender our children to his care, how will we surrender ourselves to his care? To surrender ourselves to his care, we need to turn within and hold on to I am. That's our only duty.
Correct. Yeah.
In talks or somewhere it's recorded, Bhagavan said, your duty is not to be this or that. Your duty is just to be. Yes. So this is our swadharma. Our swadharma is holding on to self-attentiveness and thereby being as we actually are. That is, Bhagavan said, this alone is true swadharma. All the other so-called swadharmas are dharmas for the person we take ourselves to be. But swa means oneself. So the true swadharma is to hold on to oneself. Dharma comes from a root that means hold, dhru. So we holding ourselves, that is the true swadharma.
Yes. Thank you so much, Michael. It's a blessing to be part of your association.
Well, it's all, we are blessed by Bhagavan. All blessings come only from Bhagavan.
Yeah.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Arunachala Ramanaya.
Thank you so much. And I continue to listen to your things, and the blog is beautiful. When I look at the blog, your blog, when I go back to all the old and like 5 years, 6 years ago, it gives like a lot more. And sometimes I feel that people are asking the same questions and you're patiently answering it. It is the same, similar Bhagavan's pointing it, but it's like I feel that I'm probably taking a lot of time from James, without going back to his teachings, or you already gave it. But it's like
Bhagavan was patiently answering these things for 54 years. The same thing, because this is so simple. We have to just go on saying the same thing again and again and again.
Yeah. And I think the key I learned is the more you understand, the more and more you read it, then it becomes clearer and clearer. Because first time it was like probably plain text, and maybe 1%, some things seems to be understanding, rest of things probably not. But when I have more repetitive reading, then it's like, oh, becoming more and more clear. Then it's like, oh, it is like so clearly giving it why I couldn't understand. But it's just a level of understanding. I probably mind.
It's important to read Bhagavan's works again and again and to think deeply about them. But the real clarity comes from putting them into practice.
Yeah.
We can only understand what we read to the extent to which we put it into practice.
Yeah, and all the things, I think any part of the text is giving that kind of practical teaching. I see it, even if you just take middle of the text, it gives the same thing.
Yeah. If we understand Bhagavan correctly, all his teachings are practical. He's always pointing us at the practice.
Yes. So beautiful. I feel that Bhagavan, it was necessary for us, and I think Bhagavan appeared in the human form and gave it the teachings.
Yes.
It's just a blessing. I don't know. It's like how I can describe his presence.
Yeah.
It is something that cannot explain why he came. Is like something is like so much needed. Otherwise, I cannot imagine like without having Bhagavan's incarnation. It's like it will be like so orphans. It's like we'll be diluted so much into this world.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Michael.
Okay.
Yeah.
Namo Bhagavate Sri Arunachala Ramanaya.